Please, I need a man's warmth, the trembling girl whispered through chattering teeth, her dark skin glistening with rain as she collapsed against the weathered cabin door where the mountain man stood frozen in the doorway. The world sees her as nothing, a disposable shadow meant to vanish into the unforgiving frontier, another nameless casualty of a land that devours the weak and forgotten. Everyone assumes she'll be dead by morning, claimed by the storm or her own desperation. But the towering rancher recognizes something familiar in her terror-filled eyes, the look of someone running from a truth too dangerous to speak. What neither realizes is that her survival will expose corruption reaching far beyond their isolated valley, and the very act of sheltering her will force them both to confront enemies who have already killed to keep their secrets buried. Will saving her life destroy them both, or will her hidden knowledge become the weapon that finally brings justice to a lawless land? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The storm struck without mercy across the Montana Territory. Lightning split the sky as Celeste Washington stumbled through the muddy terrain. Her legs trembled with each step. 3 days without proper food or shelter had taken their toll. Thunder crashed overhead. Rain soaked through her thin dress. The cold bit deep into her bones. She needed warmth or she would die tonight. A dim light flickered through the darkness ahead. A cabin sat alone against the mountainside. Smoke rose from its chimney. Her heart pounded as she approached the wooden door. Inside, Ezra Stone looked up from his evening meal. The knock came soft, but desperate. He set down his fork and walked to the door. Years of solitude had made him cautious of visitors. He opened the door slowly. A young woman stood before him, shivering violently. Her dark skin was pale from cold. Her eyes held a terror he recognized from his own past. "Please," she whispered through chattering teeth. "I need a man's warmth." Ezra stepped aside without a word. She collapsed the moment she crossed the threshold. He caught her before she hit the floor. Her body was ice-cold and burning with fever at the same time. He carried her to the chair by the fireplace. She was unconscious now. Ezra wrapped a thick blanket around her shoulders. He added more wood to the fire. The woman's breathing was shallow but steady. Ezra studied her face in the firelight. She was young, maybe 20. Her hands were soft, not calloused like most frontier women. Her dress, though torn and muddy, was made from quality fabric. She didn't belong out here alone. Ezra made coffee and waited. Questions filled his mind. Who was she running from? What had driven her into the wilderness during storm season? Dawn broke gray and cold. The woman stirred in the chair. Her eyes opened slowly. She looked around the cabin with confusion, then fear. "You're safe," Ezra said from across the room. "For now." She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. Ezra caught her arm and helped her back to the chair. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm Celeste." "Ezra Stone." She nodded and pulled the blanket tighter. Her eyes darted to the windows. She was still afraid. "What are you running from?" Ezra asked. Celeste hesitated. "Trouble in St. Louis." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that follows you." Ezra poured coffee and handed her the cup. She wrapped her fingers around the warm metal gratefully. "You can't stay long," he said. "This isn't a place for visitors." "I understand." But even as she said it, Celeste knew she had nowhere else to go. The fever still burned in her chest. Her legs could barely support her weight. She needed more time to recover. Ezra watched her drink the coffee. Something about her manner puzzled him. She held herself with dignity despite her desperate state. Her speech was educated, refined. This wasn't some common drifter. A horse approached outside. Ezra grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. A woman in a brown riding coat dismounted near the porch. "My sister," Ezra said. He set the rifle down, but his jaw remained tight. Martha Stone knocked twice before entering. She was a sturdy woman with graying hair pulled back severely. Her eyes swept the cabin and landed on Celeste. "Ezra," Martha said carefully. "Who is this?" "Someone who needed shelter." Martha's expression hardened. She recognized what Celeste was immediately. The tension in the room grew thick. "You know what people will say," Martha whispered to her brother. "I don't care what people say." "You should." Martha glanced at Celeste again. "Especially now." She pulled a folded paper from her coat. Wanted posters. Ezra took them and read silently. His face showed no emotion. "Dangerous thief," Martha read aloud. "Reward for capture. From St. Louis." Celeste set down her coffee cup. Her hands shook, but not from cold this time. "Is it true?" Ezra asked. "No," Celeste said firmly. "It's not." Martha shook her head. "They all say that." "Martha," Ezra warned, "think about this, brother. Think about what you're risking." After Martha left, the cabin fell silent. Ezra studied the wanted poster again. The description matched perfectly, but something in Celeste's eyes made him doubt the accusations. "Tell me the truth," he said. Celeste looked at the fire. "I worked for a judge in St. Louis. I saw something I shouldn't have. When I tried to report it, he turned the tables on me." "What did you see?" "Corruption, theft, things that would destroy powerful men." Ezra had heard similar stories before. During his years as a lawman, he'd witnessed how quickly justice could be twisted by those with influence. "So, you ran." "What choice did I have?" Outside, more horses passed on the distant trail. Word was spreading. The wanted posters were being distributed to every settlement in the territory. Celeste stood up slowly. "I should leave before I bring you more trouble." "Where will you go?" She had no answer. The fever still weakened her. Winter was approaching fast. Alone in the wilderness, she would die within days. Ezra made his decision. "You can stay until you're stronger." "Why would you help me?" "Because I know what it's like to be hunted by corrupt men." But as night fell again, both of them wondered if kindness would be enough to survive what was coming. 3 days passed in careful routine. Celeste slept by the fire while her strength returned. Ezra maintained his distance, watching for signs of pursuit. The fever finally broke on the 4th morning. Ezra sat at his wooden table, surrounded by papers. His brow was furrowed in frustration. Legal documents covered every inch of the surface. Land deeds, contracts, and official notices formed chaotic piles. Celeste watched from her chair. She could see him struggling with the dense legal language. His finger traced each line slowly. He would read the same paragraph multiple times. "Problems?" she asked quietly. Ezra looked up. "The bank says I owe more than I agreed to. These papers don't match what we discussed. May I look?" He hesitated. Letting her see his business felt dangerous. But desperation won over caution. He slid the contract across the table. Celeste picked up the document. Her eyes moved quickly across the pages. She found the problem within minutes. "This clause," she said, pointing to a dense paragraph. "It changes your interest rate after 6 months. The increase is buried in legal terminology." Ezra stared at her. "You can read all that?" "The compound interest calculation is deliberately confusing. They're hoping you won't notice the change." She reached for another document. This one was a property deed. Again, her analysis was swift and precise. "This boundary description is wrong," she continued. "According to this survey, you're missing 20 acres on the western edge." Ezra's mouth fell open. No one in town could have caught these details. Even the local lawyer struggled with simple contracts. "How do you know this?" Celeste set the papers down carefully. "I worked in Judge Blackwood's office for 3 years. I processed hundreds of legal documents. I know how they hide deceptions." "You're not just a clerk. I handled complex cases, property disputes, criminal appeals, contract negotiations. The judge relied on my analysis for his decisions." Ezra studied her with new eyes. This changed everything. An educated woman on the frontier was rarer than gold. Someone with legal expertise was practically unheard of. "Why did Blackwood turn on you?" Celeste's face darkened. "I discovered he was stealing from clients. He would alter documents after they were signed. estate settlements, property transfers, court settlements. He stole thousands of dollars. You tried to stop him. I gathered evidence, copied altered documents, built a case against him. Her voice grew bitter. He was faster. He destroyed my evidence and created new documents showing I was the thief. So you ran. What else could I do? Who would believe a clerk over a respected judge? Ezra looked at his contracts again. Can you fix these? I can draft a letter challenging the illegal terms. The bank will have to honor the original agreement or face legal action. Within an hour, Celeste had written a detailed legal response. Her handwriting was precise. Her arguments were methodical and irrefutable. She cited specific laws and precedents from memory. Ezra read her work with amazement. This is better than anything the town lawyer could produce. Legal knowledge isn't magic. It's just understanding how systems work. A knock interrupted them. Martha entered without waiting for permission. She stopped short when she saw the papers scattered across the table. What's all this? Legal work, Ezra said. Martha noticed Celeste's handwriting on several documents. The elegant script was unmistakably feminine. Her eyes widened. She wrote these? Every word. Martha picked up one of Celeste's legal briefs. She read slowly, recognizing the sophisticated language even if she couldn't follow all the arguments. You're educated, Martha said to Celeste. Yes. How educated? I can read, write, analyze legal documents, and teach others to do the same. Martha set the paper down carefully. As the town's schoolteacher, she understood the value of education. She also knew how desperately the community needed legal help. The town has been cheated many times, Martha said slowly. Contracts we couldn't understand. Deeds that weren't what we thought. Legal disputes we always lost. It happens everywhere, Celeste replied. People take advantage of those who can't read the fine print. Could you help them? Ezra tensed. Helping others meant exposure. Exposure meant danger. It's risky, he warned his sister. But necessary, Martha replied. Half the settlers have been swindled. The other half live in fear of legal papers they can't comprehend. That evening, Martha brought Tom Fletcher to the cabin. He was a wheat farmer with calloused hands and worried eyes. His family faced eviction over a contract dispute. Celeste reviewed his documents by lamplight. The problem was obvious to her trained eye. The creditor added terms after you signed, she explained. These initials aren't yours. The ink is different. This addition is fraudulent. Tom's relief was visible. Can you prove it? In court, yes, but that means attention, publicity. Tom didn't care about her past. His family needed their farm. Celeste spent the night drafting Tom's legal defense. Her arguments were airtight. Her documentation was thorough. By morning, she had built a case that would save his property. Word spread carefully through the community. The educated woman staying with Ezra Stone could read legal papers. She could spot deceptions. She could fight back against those who preyed on the illiterate. More settlers came to the cabin. Each brought documents they couldn't understand. Celeste found problems in nearly every case: altered contracts, fraudulent clauses, deliberate deceptions designed to steal land and money. A pattern emerged. Many of the problematic documents bore official seals from traveling judges, men who held court in temporary locations before moving on to the next town. This is organized, Celeste told Ezra. Someone is systematically cheating frontier communities. Can you stop it? I can try, but it will draw attention. Neither of them knew that attention was already coming. Judge Cornelius Blackwood had traced her path across 3 territories. He was closing in fast. 2 weeks passed quietly at the cabin. Celeste's reputation spread through whispered conversations and careful recommendations. Settlers arrived after dark, carrying bundles of legal papers. She worked by candlelight, finding fraud in nearly every case. Ezra watched her transform from desperate fugitive to confident advocate. Her hands no longer shook. Her voice carried authority when she explained complex legal concepts to confused farmers and ranchers. The pattern of corruption became clearer with each case. Traveling judges would hold court in frontier towns, then alter documents after signing. They targeted communities without permanent legal representation. The victims were always the same: poor settlers, minorities, anyone without political influence. Martha brought increasingly complex cases to the cabin: property disputes that had ruined families, contract frauds that had stolen entire harvests, criminal convictions based on forged evidence. "This goes beyond simple theft," Celeste told Ezra one evening. "This is systematic oppression." She had mapped out the fraudulent cases across a dozen territories. The same names appeared repeatedly: Judge Cornelius Blackwood, Attorney Marcus Webb, Court Clerk Stanley Morrison. They moved from town to town like a traveling circus of corruption. "They're stealing everything," Ezra said, studying her chart. "Land, money, freedom. They destroy lives for profit." Their work had created something neither expected: partnership. Ezra handled the practical security while Celeste managed the legal warfare. They moved together with growing trust and understanding. But their success attracted dangerous attention. Judge Cornelius Blackwood arrived in town on a Tuesday morning. His black carriage rolled down the main street with official authority. Federal marshals rode alongside. His presence commanded immediate respect from local officials. Blackwood was a tall man with silver hair and cold eyes. His expensive clothes and confident manner marked him as someone with serious power. He set up temporary court in the town hall and announced his intention to address legal irregularities in the territory. Martha heard the news first. She rode hard to Ezra's cabin with panic in her eyes. "He's here," she gasped. "Judge Blackwood, in town." Celeste went pale. "He found me." "Who is he exactly?" Ezra demanded. "My former employer, the man who framed me. He's tracked me across 3 territories." Through the window, they could see dust clouds on the distant road. More officials were arriving. Blackwood wasn't taking chances this time. "We need to hide you," Ezra said. "No." Celeste's voice was steady. "Running hasn't solved anything. He'll keep hunting me until I'm dead or imprisoned." "So what do you want to do?" "Fight back." That afternoon, Blackwood began his investigation. He questioned townspeople about unusual legal activities. Someone had been challenging official court documents. Someone was interfering with legitimate judicial business. The judge offered rewards for information about the criminal legal practitioner operating without authority. He described Celeste perfectly without mentioning her name. Some townspeople remained loyal. Others, frightened by federal authority, began to talk. They described the educated woman helping with legal problems, the mysterious stranger living with the hermit rancher. Blackwood's net tightened with each interview. Martha visited the cabin again after dark. "He knows you're here. He's planning to arrest you tomorrow." "Let him come," Celeste said. "You can't fight federal marshals," Ezra warned. "I won't fight with violence. I'll fight with truth." She had spent the day preparing her counterattack. Documents spread across Ezra's table like weapons in an armory. Evidence of Blackwood's corruption stretched back years. Testimonies from his victims, proof of altered contracts, financial records showing stolen money. "I've been gathering this evidence since I left St. Louis," she explained. "Every town I passed through, I found his victims. Every courthouse had records of his crimes. Will it be enough? It has to be." But Celeste had discovered something even more damaging during her weeks in Montana. Blackwood's operation was larger than she had imagined. He wasn't working alone. "Look at these signatures," she said, pointing to various documents. "Marcus Webb, Stanley Morrison, even some of the federal marshals. They're all part of it." The corruption network extended through multiple territories and government levels. They had been stealing from frontier communities for over a decade. The total theft amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of acres of land. "This isn't just about me anymore," Celeste realized. "This is about justice for everyone they've robbed." Ezra studied the evidence. How do we expose something this big? Carefully and publicly. That night, Martha helped them plan. As schoolteacher, she had connections throughout the community. She knew which citizens could be trusted and which ones would support justice over authority. "The whole town will be watching tomorrow," Martha said. "When Blackwood makes his arrest, everyone will see." Good, Celeste replied. I want witnesses. She spent her final free hours writing letters to territorial governors, federal prosecutors, and newspaper editors. Each letter contained detailed evidence of the corruption network. If Blackwood succeeded in silencing her, the truth would still survive. Ezra watched her work with admiration and fear. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Running has only made things worse. Someone has to stand up to them. Then I'll stand with you. It could destroy your life. My life was already destroyed. This gives it meaning again. Dawn approached with the weight of Judgment Day. Celeste had transformed from desperate refugee to determined warrior. She had chosen her battlefield and prepared her weapons, but neither she nor Ezra knew just how many enemies they would face when the sun rose. Morning came with the sound of horses. Judge Blackwood rode into the town square with 6 federal marshals. His black robes billowed in the wind as he dismounted. The entire community gathered to witness whatever was about to unfold. Ezra and Celeste walked from the cabin together. She carried a leather satchel filled with documents. Her head was high despite the danger. Ezra stayed close beside her, his hand resting on his rifle. The crowd parted as they approached. Some faces showed sympathy. Others displayed fear or curiosity. Martha stood near the front with several schoolchildren behind her. Blackwood saw Celeste immediately. His cold smile revealed satisfaction at finally cornering his prey. Citizens of this territory, Blackwood announced in a booming voice, I present to you Celeste Washington, wanted criminal from St. Louis. He produced official papers with dramatic flourish. Theft of legal documents, forgery of court records, fraudulent representation in legal matters. The crowd murmured. Some had heard rumors about the wanted woman. Others knew only of her helpful work with their legal problems. This woman has been practicing law without authority, Blackwood continued. She has interfered with legitimate court proceedings. She has stolen money from honest citizens. That's not true, Celeste said clearly. Her voice carried across the square. Several settlers who had benefited from her help nodded in agreement. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. You deny the charges? I deny your authority to make them. She opened her satchel and removed a thick stack of papers. I have evidence of your crimes, Judge Blackwood. Years of systematic theft and corruption. The crowd grew silent. Accusing a federal judge was dangerous territory. Lies and fabrications, Blackwood said. Desperate attempts to avoid justice. Then let me present my evidence. Celeste held up the first document. This is a property deed from Denver. You altered it after the original owner signed it. You stole 300 acres from the Morrison family. She showed the paper to nearby townspeople. They could see the different ink colors and handwriting styles. Blackwood's face reddened. Forgeries created by this criminal. This is a bank contract from Cheyenne. Celeste produced another document. You changed the interest rate from 5% to 15%. The Henderson Ranch was foreclosed based on your fraudulent terms. More evidence followed. Contract after contract showing clear signs of alteration. Financial records proving stolen funds. Testimony letters from victims across multiple territories. The crowd grew restless. Many recognized similar problems in their own legal dealings. I have documentation of a corruption network, Celeste announced. Judge Blackwood works with attorney Marcus Webb and court clerk Stanley Morrison. They travel from town to town, stealing from communities that lack legal representation. One of the federal marshals stepped forward nervously. Celeste recognized his name from her research. Marshal Davis, she said, looking directly at him. You witnessed the fraudulent Morrison case in Denver. Your signature is on the forged documents. Davis's hand moved to his weapon. The situation was escalating beyond Blackwood's control. Enough, the judge commanded. This woman is a dangerous criminal. She must be arrested immediately. But Tom Fletcher pushed forward from the crowd. She saved my farm from illegal foreclosure. Mine too, called another settler. She found fraud in my contract, said a third voice. More testimonies erupted from the crowd. Celeste had helped dozens of families. Her legal work had saved homes, businesses, and livelihoods. Blackwood realized his strategy was failing. Citizens, don't be fooled by this criminal's manipulations. Show us your evidence, Martha demanded. Let the community examine your documents like we examined hers. Blackwood hesitated. His forged evidence wouldn't withstand close scrutiny. Celeste pressed her advantage. The corruption goes deeper than you know. I've traced stolen funds to banks in 5 territories. Land theft totaling over 2 million acres. Criminal convictions based on falsified evidence. She pulled out a map showing the network's operations. They target frontier communities specifically because there's no local legal expertise to challenge them. The crowd studied her evidence with growing anger. Many recognized their own cases in her documentation. This is why I was framed, Celeste continued. I discovered their operation in St. Louis. When I tried to report it, Judge Blackwood destroyed my evidence and created false charges against me. Lies! Blackwood shouted. But his authority was crumbling. Ezra stepped forward. I've seen her work for weeks. Every document she's analyzed, every case she's reviewed, she's exposed fraud in nearly every instance. I was a lawman for 12 years, Ezra announced to the crowd. I know corruption when I see it, and I know justice when I see it. His endorsement carried weight. The community knew Ezra's reputation for honesty. Marshal Davis whispered urgently to Blackwood. Other marshals looked uncertain. The situation was slipping away from them. There's more, Celeste said. Letters from territorial governors, federal prosecutors, and newspaper editors. They're all investigating this corruption network now. Blackwood's face went pale. You're bluffing. The letters were sent yesterday. Copies of all evidence included. Your operation is finished, Judge Blackwood. The crowd pressed closer, demanding to see more evidence. Some called for immediate arrests. Others wanted explanations for their own legal problems. Blackwood found himself surrounded by angry citizens instead of respectful subjects. His federal authority meant nothing against clear evidence of corruption. This isn't over, he said quietly to Celeste. Yes, it is. The tension in the square reached a breaking point. Citizens surrounded Blackwood and his marshals, demanding answers about their own legal troubles. The judge's authority crumbled under the weight of evidence and public anger. Citizens, maintain order, Blackwood commanded, but his voice lacked conviction. Martha stepped forward with a stack of papers. These are contracts from our school district. Someone altered the funding agreements after we signed them. She handed the documents to Celeste. The crowd watched as the young woman examined them quickly. Same pattern, Celeste announced. Original terms changed after signing. Different ink, different handwriting. Your school was cheated out of $2,000. Angry murmurs swept through the gathered townspeople. Their children's education had been stolen from them. Tom Fletcher raised his voice above the crowd. I say we hold our own trial right here. Agreed, called another settler. Let the community decide who's telling the truth. Blackwood backed toward his carriage. This is highly irregular. Federal authority cannot be challenged by mob justice. This isn't mob justice, Ezra said firmly. This is community justice. The crowd organized itself quickly. Citizens formed a large circle around the speakers. Martha appointed herself as moderator. Several respected community members agreed to serve as judges. Present your case, Judge Blackwood, Martha announced formally. Blackwood straightened his robes and tried to regain control. This woman is a wanted fugitive. She has committed serious crimes in St. Louis. He produced his official documents again. These federal warrants supersede any local proceedings. Let us examine those warrants, Celeste said calmly. The crowd supported her request. Martha took the documents and passed them to several literate townspeople. Celeste studied the warrants carefully. Her legal training revealed problems immediately. These dates are inconsistent, she pointed out. The alleged crimes occurred after I left St. Louis, according to your own timeline. She showed the papers to the community judges. The witness signatures don't match court records I obtained from the courthouse. More problems emerged under scrutiny. Missing seals, incorrect legal language, forged notarizations. The warrants were as fraudulent as everything else in Blackwood's operation. "Your turn," Martha said to Celeste. Celeste organized her evidence methodically. She presented cases chronologically, showing the pattern of corruption across years and territories. "The Denver case," she began, holding up documents. "Original deed signed by James Morrison for 500 acres at $5 per acre." She showed the crowd the clean, consistent handwriting on the original contract. "Altered deed filed in court records. 800 acres at $15 per acre. Different ink, different handwriting, same signature." The forgery was obvious to everyone present. Even those who couldn't read could see the different ink colors. "The Morrison family lost their farm based on this fraudulent document," Celeste continued. "They were forced to sell at the higher price they never agreed to." Case after case followed. Each one revealed the same pattern of theft and deception. The community listened with growing outrage as they recognized their own experiences in her testimony. Marshal Davis stepped forward nervously. "I want to make a statement." Blackwood's face went white. "Davis, you're under federal orders." "Not anymore," Davis replied. "I'm tired of being part of this corruption." He addressed the crowd directly. "Everything she says is true. We've been altering documents for 3 years. Judge Blackwood forced us to participate or lose our jobs." Other marshals began backing away from Blackwood. His inner circle was collapsing in real time. "How many victims?" Martha asked Davis. "Hundreds, maybe thousands across all the territories." The scope of the corruption stunned the community. This wasn't isolated fraud, but systematic theft on a massive scale. Celeste presented her final piece of evidence. Letters sent to territorial governors and federal prosecutors, full documentation included. Investigations are already beginning in Denver, Cheyenne, and St. Louis. She held up copies of the letters. "Judge Blackwood's operation is finished. The only question now is how many of his victims will receive justice." The community judges conferred quietly. Their decision was unanimous and swift. "We find Judge Blackwood guilty of systematic fraud and corruption," Martha announced. "We recommend immediate arrest and federal prosecution." The crowd erupted in approval. Citizens who had suffered under fraudulent legal decisions finally saw hope for justice. "We find Celeste Washington innocent of all charges," Martha continued. "Furthermore, we recognize her service to our community and request her continued assistance with legal matters." Blackwood made one final attempt to regain control. "You have no authority to make these determinations." "We have the authority of truth," Ezra said firmly. "And the authority of an informed community," added Martha. The sound of approaching horses interrupted the proceedings. A new group of riders entered the town square. These men wore different uniforms and carried different badges. The lead rider dismounted and approached the gathering. "I'm Federal Marshal Thompson from the territorial capital. We received urgent communications about judicial corruption in this region." Celeste stepped forward. "You received my letters." "We did. Very thorough documentation. We're here to investigate and make arrests." Thompson looked at Blackwood with disgust. "Judge Cornelius Blackwood, you're under federal arrest for corruption, fraud, and abuse of judicial authority." The corrupt marshals were arrested alongside their former leader. Their network of deception finally collapsed under the weight of evidence and community action. As the prisoners were led away, the townspeople gathered around Celeste. The woman who had arrived desperate and hunted was now their hero and advocate. "Will you stay?" Martha asked hopefully. Celeste looked at Ezra, then at the community that had stood with her against corruption. "Yes," she said simply. "I'll stay." 3 months later, the transformation was complete. Celeste stood before a packed courthouse as the territorial governor officially cleared her name. Federal prosecutors had built their case on her evidence, exposing corruption across 5 territories. Judge Blackwood faced 20 years in federal prison. His network of corrupt officials received similar sentences. Most importantly, the stolen lands were being returned to their rightful owners. The courthouse celebration spilled into the streets. Families who had lost everything were getting their property back. Communities that had been systematically cheated finally received justice. Tom Fletcher shook Celeste's hand gratefully. My farm is officially mine again. No fraudulent contracts, no altered terms. The Henderson Ranch gets their land back too, added another settler. 300 acres stolen by fake documents. Celeste smiled at their happiness, but her work was far from finished. Letters arrived daily from other territories requesting her help with suspicious legal cases. Martha approached with exciting news. The territorial government approved funding for a legal advocacy office. They want you to run it. With full authority to investigate fraud cases, full authority and federal backing. The offer represented everything Celeste had hoped for. Official recognition, legal power, and the resources to help countless victims of corruption. Ezra found her later that evening on the porch of their shared cabin. The relationship between them had evolved naturally from partnership to something deeper. "The governor's offer is generous," he said. "It's what I always wanted. The chance to fight corruption with official support. But I'd have to travel constantly. Denver, Cheyenne, all the territorial capitals. It means leaving here." Ezra understood her dilemma. The work was important, but this community had become home for both of them. "There's another option," he said carefully. "What?" "The town council met today. They want to offer you a permanent position as legal advocate and school teacher." Celeste's eyes widened. "Both positions?" "Martha is getting older. She needs help with the school, and everyone knows we need someone to handle legal matters. What about you? The council asked me to be sheriff again. Seems they trust my judgment now." The offer was tempting. Staying meant building something lasting instead of constantly traveling to fight new battles. "I could establish a model program here," Celeste mused. "Show other communities how to protect themselves from legal fraud. You could train local people to spot document alterations and contract problems. Create a network of educated citizens who can't be easily cheated." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. The desperate woman who had begged for warmth was gone, replaced by someone with purpose and power. Martha joined them on the porch with her decision made. "I'm retiring from teaching at the end of the term." "Are you sure?" Celeste asked. "I'm sure you're the right person to replace me." The next morning, Celeste stood before her first official class. 20 students of various ages filled the one-room schoolhouse. Some were children learning basic reading. Others were adults who wanted to understand legal documents. "Today we learn about contracts," she announced, holding up a simple agreement. "How to read them, how to spot problems, how to protect yourselves." The lessons were practical and immediately useful. She taught them to look for different ink colors, inconsistent handwriting, and suspicious language. These skills would protect the community for generations. Ezra watched from the doorway with pride. The frightened woman who had collapsed at his cabin door had become the community's most valuable citizen. After school, Celeste opened her legal advocacy office in the building next door. Her first client was a young couple with questions about a property deed. "We want to buy the Miller place," the husband explained, "but the contract seems complicated." Celeste reviewed their documents quickly. "The terms are fair and properly written. No hidden clauses or suspicious alterations." "So we can sign safely?" "Yes, but let me add a protective clause to prevent future alterations." Word of her thoroughness spread quickly. Soon people traveled from neighboring communities to have their legal documents reviewed. The small office became a center of justice and education. Federal Marshal Thompson visited regularly to consult on corruption cases. "Your model is working," he told Celeste. "Communities with legal education report significantly less fraud. Knowledge is the best protection against deception." "The territorial government wants to expand your program. They're offering funding for legal education centers in 10 communities." Celeste considered the proposal. She could train other teachers, create standardized curricula, and build a network of protected communities. "I accept, with conditions." "What conditions?" "I maintain my base here. My students become the teacher trainers. We build the program from the ground up with local people." Thompson agreed immediately. The plan would create sustainable protection against future corruption. 1 year after her desperate arrival, Celeste stood before the largest community gathering in the town's history. Representatives from 12 territories had come to learn about legal education and fraud prevention. Education is empowerment, she told the assembled crowd. When people understand their rights and can read legal documents, they cannot be easily cheated. The audience included territorial governors, federal officials, and community leaders. Her influence had spread far beyond the small frontier town where she had first found shelter. Ezra stood proudly in the front row, wearing his sheriff's badge. Their partnership had evolved into leadership that served justice throughout the region. Martha sat with the first class of teacher trainees, preparing to spread legal education across the frontier. The network of protection was growing stronger every day. As applause filled the hall, Celeste remembered her desperate whisper in the storm. She had asked for a man's warmth and found so much more. She had discovered her own strength, built a community of justice, and created lasting change that would protect future generations. The trembling girl who had begged for shelter was gone forever, replaced by a woman who provided shelter for others.